You gonna hit me in the head?
That's Jimmy's. Put your fingers out there. Right now.
You got reflex.
That's Jimmy's right now. He's got to run the
That's
hospital.
right, he does that.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to, tie a string to it so if it don't go fast enough, I'll yank it.
I'm not worried about this one. The next one's on. You need to make sure.
I'll get it back on that one.
Just going to tell you, I'm probably going to be hangry by the end of the second one.
Yeah. I thought you'd bring us up.
I thought it was on you today.
Well, it was.
That was
Well,
the email I got.
I've been waiting on you three amigos to bring me.
That was the email I
Hey,
got.
Rick
Bring
brought
lunch
peaches
all
last
day.
time, man. You can't put it on us.
You can sign in too.
Okay.
The email I got.
Hi,
Hey,
Christy Blaylock.
how are you?
How are you?
The email I got was pizza and wings on Jody Youngster.
All I can tell you is you're all out of luck.
Oh, man. Oh, that's good.
So today's
It's not that bad, but I think you can hear us.
Don't you just go to the, just to
a bit of a rat race.
If you do, Paul comes on, it goes back.
Okay.
Yeah.
One day closer to being done.
Let's just go to your desk and see if you can hear them.
okay.
How you doing, sir?
You really didn't bring nothing to eat? Really?
Yeah, I didn't get the email.
Which email is that? The one about you providing food?
Yeah, I didn't get that one.
You didn't
Did you
get
get that one,
that?
Rick?
Yeah,
You didn't
I
see
seen
the,
it.
the email about me bringing
She
food?
did, Rick. We was talking about it before you come in here.
Oh,
I ain't checked it lately, so it's probably on there. That's what I was sitting here thinking. That was your idea, wasn't it?
it was. I remember Pam saying that, but
Well, if we get done in time, if y'all still got something down there, Pam,
Yeah, there he is. Officially.
You got a lot of work tonight.
Right, Pam? No, really,
I think I was.
really, they just transitioned over. I got you. That's good. So we'll go ahead and call our meeting to order and have our invocations. I heard some discussion between Mr. Morris and Mr. Nicholson. I'm going to go ahead and ask Mr. Morris if we will to.
Let's pray. Most gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for the many blessings you've given us. We thank you for the freedom we have to meet here and conduct local government. We ask for your guidance and wisdom as we make decisions that will hopefully positively impact our constituents. Please lead, guide, and direct us as we go through the coming week. In your most gracious name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Have a pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our next item is our approval of the agenda, and I have one change I'd like to recommend. And that is, if we need a closed session, which I think a brief closed session might be good, we need to move that ahead of recess or adjourn. So if that,
Make a motion to approve the agenda with the possible necessity of adding a closed session to the agenda.
okay, is there a second?
I say.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, no. So the agenda is approved with the change as suggested. The next item is the minutes. Probably pretty cut and dried, fairly brief. What's the pleasure of this board regarding the minutes?
Make a motion to approve the minutes from November 3rd, 2016.
Second.
I have a motion and a second that the minutes be approved as presented. Any discussion? Those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, no. Minutes of the November 3rd, 2016 meeting are approved. Review of the Stokes Reynolds Hospital Incorporated amended and restated bylaws effective March 2010. Has everyone had a chance to sufficiently review the bylaws? There's a chance we may need to recess this meeting depending on how far we get with items we're hoping to cover. We can either take a little time to finish reviewing them if needed, or we could give each board member a chance to review them, and we could have another brief meeting at a time in the near future to approve or amend them. What's the pleasure of the board regarding the bylaws?
I think we probably need to review them and amend them probably before we do the other agenda items.
Okay,
So I think they may impact some of the other agenda items possibly, depending on how we might change them. So.
have a recommendation from Board Member Morris that we proceed with reviewing and amending the board bylaws at this time. Any other suggestions, thoughts, recommendations?
I think it ever hurts to review, so I'll second that.
Okay, so did you make a motion that we go ahead and, well, we don't need a motion, we'll just get concurrence, but thank you anyway.
You're quite welcome.
Let's take a few minutes, say 5 minutes or so, and give it another review that we all have looked at them at some point, and see if there's anything that stands out, particularly anything that would affect how we conduct this meeting.
If I might
what was different when these were brought into
Right.
existence versus where we are now.
It's just behind the bylaws, I believe. Thank you, Pam. We're close.
I am.
Okay. Floor is now open for discussion of the Stokes County Stokes Reynolds Memorial Hospital Board of Trustees. And one kind of piece of information that I will share, Pam Christie has some history as well. But one thing I recall is when Pioneer, and I think they acquired the operation of the hospital, back to Pam's timeline, August 2011. Pioneer acquired the operation of the hospital. There was some discussion at that time whether or not a board of trustees was needed because, as you can readily see in the bylaws, these bylaws are designed for the board of trustees to run the hospital, to operate the hospital. Well, with Pioneer and subsequently LifeBright actually operating the hospital, I'm not seeing a whole lot of these current bylaws that fit today's actual situation. They're much more intricately involved in the day-to-day operation of the hospital than this board has been, except for the time back March 2010 to August 2011, and that's when this current board of trustees, I think, came into being, and that's when Stokes County actually did operate the hospital. And so a lot more of what we're seeing here today seems to apply toward actually operating a hospital. My concern is how much under today's current configuration, LifeBright being the operator of the hospital, do these bylaws apply? And I don't feel really in a position to fully determine that. I would rely heavily on the legal advice of our county attorney regarding some of these items and what would be appropriate in a revised, up-to-date set of bylaws and what wouldn't. Because I don't want to be a part of creating a set of bylaws that misses the target. It doesn't really fit where things are today. And the big question going in is how much authority does the Board of Trustees actually have if we're not operating the hospital? And there was a question again about whether this Board of Trustees was even needed or not when Pioneer first took over the operation of the hospital. So we're open for discussion. Pam, if you need to join in, please feel free to. And I see out of the corner of my eye, hand move. Was that because you wanted to say something? Okay.
I have way too many hours in this and too much time invested not to make a few comments here. So
Sure.
I'll do that. Pam, the timeline is really good that you gave us. It kind of brings back nightmares, some of it does, but I think what the timeline here shows is that one thing you can infer by looking at this timeline is that the hospital business is a risky business in a rural county, and I think we've proven that with all the gyrations that the county's been through in an attempt to keep the hospital open, and we've been successful up until this point of doing that. Many of our neighbors have not been so successful. I think I heard the other day that Randolph had a community hospital that was going to be closing. Of course, Pioneer closed up in and Virginia there, whenever they went through the bankruptcy here. Yadkin County's hospital closed with zero chance of reopening. So if you lose a hospital, it's definitely gone. In the case of our hospital, in my opinion, it's providing a tremendous amount of medical service to the county. We have a concentration of medical support in King from several providers, but once you get outside of King, it's the hospital providing services up in this area. They're providing services in Pine Hall with a couple of providers down there. And then they are providing some pretty good services in King, things like colonoscopies and podiatrists and services and a lot of other things, I think. So, to me, I think Commissioner Walker or Trustee Walker made a good point. These bylaws, they don't really fit what's going on now. And then his comments about the need for the board, I think are valid from one perspective, but I'd had some additional thoughts on it. I think, from my experience here, we've always been reactive instead of proactive. As we went through all these gyrations that are described here on Pam's timeline. And there may be a need for, I definitely think that, like he said, there's a need for a new set of bylaws that match as closely as possible through legal channels and through assistance from Pam and others that match the situation as we have it now. And then I think, along with those bylaws, we ought to maybe look at a board of trustees that becomes very proactive and aggressive in not running the hospital, but being involved with the hospital and the services it provides in the satellite locations. To figure out, first of all, how we keep the services and don't lose them like everybody else has, or a lot of others have, and then also to maybe be a proactive force and look strategically at what the medical services should be in the county, for all parts of the county. As out in the future, and plan for that, and try to proactively take steps that ensure we have the right footprint, the right facilities. I mean, for instance, they're in this building up here that we're spending a good bit of money on it, keeping it going, and that building's not going to support the hospital forever if it stays open. So. Which I think it should, in my personal opinion, so I use it for about all my medical services. But I think, that maybe it needs to look different than it looks now, and the facilities maybe out in the future need to look different than what they look now. And so I'd had some thoughts of maybe definitely keeping the Board of Trustees, but maybe restructuring it. To me, it feels a little bit like the DSS and the Health Department. I'm not sure why the Board of Trustees needs to be the Board of Commissioners. If we're going to take a long-term look at whatever the definition is of how we provide medical services and make sure that we've got as many people covered in the county as we can, then we may need to structure that Board of Trustees that has experts in those areas, and especially representatives, if possible, from make sure we got all the county covered, like Walnut Cove, King, and then the northern parts of the county as well. So that's just some thoughts. It's to me, I'll wrap up my first session here with, I think one of the most important things that we do as a Board of Commissioners or Board of Trustees and a Board of Commissioners. One of the most important things we can do for the goodness of our constituents, plus for things like economic development and everything, is be able to provide adequate medical services to as much of the county as we can. And so I think we need to come up with some way, and like I said, the Board of Commissioners have got a lot of other things on the plate, so they certainly wouldn't divorce themselves from this, but being the sole group that tries to do it may not be the right solution either, and I'd be interested in what you guys think about that. But I just think it's an important thing, and it's a discriminator that, you know, a lot of rural counties have lost their hospitals or medical services or never had them to start with, and that's one thing that gives us, you know, one notch up on some of the other places if we can maintain a smart delivery of medical services to our folks. So I'll stop there and let somebody else talk.
Very good, thank you, sir. Have a favor to ask. Christy, while we're having this discussion, if you would please, would you look in these bylaws and identify specifically what we need to do concerning the current bylaws, because I know they're kind of complex, and see exactly what we need to do as far as election of officers, please. And I've already had a chance to make some comments. Who would like to go next? Yes, sir. Go right ahead, sir.
Very short comments, and you hit on one of them that I was just going to bring up, which is Article 6, Section 1, which identifies the Board of Trustees, officers, and Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Walker is our current chairman. But I also see where it says that they need a vice chairman. If everybody is with me on page 3. Article 6, Section 1, the Board of Trustees shall elect as officers of the corporation a chair and a vice chair who shall be members of the board, a president and chief executive officer, a secretary and a treasurer and chief financial officer. That would be one thing that I think needs to be looked at is our election of officers. And the other thing is, I would say that I have strong feelings that our chairman, our current chairman, needs to be in touch with our attorney and Pam and anyone from LifeBright that would want to be involved and revisit our current bylaws and have our attorney bring back a new set of bylaws to the commissioners to review and revisit. All I have at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Next.
I was just gonna say, I just fully agree. Get the county attorney, get these bylaws updated, and get back with us.
Yeah,
Don't want to cut you short.
That's it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I agree with Mr. Morris. Sustainability of the hospital, if we want to continue to sustain it at where it's at, I think this set of bylaws and the committee that was developed was for a different time and place than we're in now. I think that was in a time where they had to be created to basically run the hospital. So I think it's we absolutely have to go back through and restructure these bylaws to meet what we're looking at today. Now, there's obviously probably things in here, I think, to Mr. Mendenhall's point, what he was alluding to is there's probably some things in here, and I think you touched on it, that we need to do today to satisfy what we have in front of us. And if that's the case, then I'm certainly okay with that. But moving forward, I agree wholeheartedly with Mr. Morris that I don't necessarily think it's us five. I think we need to get the best of the best in the county, people that know this together, and come up with a plan of moving forward and make sure that we're looking, we're being proactive, a proactive approach to sustaining the hospital. So that's kind of my feel on it.
Okay. I'm having a little bit of a challenge kind of connecting all I'm hearing and trying to bring it together. I do hear some consistency regarding legal advice. This seems to me to be certainly above my pay grade as far as involvement with the hospital. I think all of us want to see the hospital as successful as it can be and continue to be as successful as it can be and feel the need that it feels. I say thank you, Lord, for LifeBright. They stepped in when things were getting close to falling over the edge. And they pitched in and have ran the hospital now for, how long, Pam? How long has LifeBright been at the helm, operating the hospital since 2016? 3 years. So 3 years we've not had to be concerned about the hospital operating. There's been some bumps in the road, some things that could have been better, but overall we've really had a great benefit by the hospital being there and being run the way it has been. I give Pam a lot of credit too. She's frontline. She's our local person who's been in charge of trying to hold things together as well as you could, and I think you've done very well at it. And I'm proud of you, proud for you that you've been able to do as much as you have for as long as you have. As far as actions today, I'm not sure that we need to take any specific actions. One thing that I'd like to, a couple of things that I want to get the other board members' thoughts on is I don't know how much sway, if any, a board of trustees can have with LifeBright. I don't know of any provision in the lease arrangement with LifeBright that allows for input from a board of trustees. So I think it would be simply an action that they volunteer to allow if there is any interaction between LifeBright and a board of trustees. Pam, will you help me with this, please? You were involved with the lease. Do you remember anything, any provision in that lease at all concerning a board of trustees?
No, sir, the entity needs to exist as the third leg of the lease right now, because that's how it was put together.
Right.
And I don't remember why it was put together that way, except Stokes Rentals was the core of the lease at the time. So because it was put together, the lease is between Stokes County, Stokes Rentals Memorial Hospital, and now LifeBright as the leasing entity. So because it exists in that format right now, we needed to keep this board going forward. And when we looked back to have our meeting is when we saw the bylaws had not been updated to reflect what the current role of the Stokes Rentals leg would be. So that's just where we are, and I think you all understand.
That's a point that I could certainly use some input from our legal counsel. And I'm sure there might even be some discussion with LifeBright's legal counsel as well about what degree, if any, involvement they would consider appropriate from a board of trustees, hospital board of trustees. And along with that, if you recall, earlier I mentioned from the Pioneer experience, there was some discussion as to whether or not a Stokes Rentals Memorial Hospital Board of Trustees would even continue to exist. It was Pioneer's suggestion that the Board of Trustees stay in place. And I remember one or two reasons they gave, just to have some, a board to have some discussion with if needed, that type thing, maybe. Let me kind of retract some of the, not retract, that means take back, that's not the word I want to use. Revisit some of the thoughts that I've heard from the board members. Generally speaking, there seems to be concurrence that we need advice from our legal counsel. Maybe a review and a thorough review of the current document and suggestions for a more appropriate document that fits today's situation better. The other thing is, I've heard some discussion about, and I think it was, Pam, help me with this too, please. You're younger and smarter and better memory than I have, so I'm going to rely on you. I think the reason we just shifted the Board of Commissioners over to the trustee role was a smooth, easy way, convenient way to do it. Whether it was the best approach or not, I really can't say that it was, but it did work. It served a purpose. And we made it through some pretty tough times. Those were not that year and a half or year and so many months that we actually ran the hospital. That was a challenge. I saw different aspects of the hospital's operation I would never have seen, never would have been involved with if it hadn't been for that. But we made it through it.
Yes, you were the decision maker, so it was the simpler thing for you all to hear directly the operation and why you were needing to make capital expenditures or operational decisions.
And we did. We made some pretty serious decisions during those times. The other thing is I've heard some discussion about a new type of board involving a different people with more of a hospital or medical background. Now, if we're going to have a new board, do we really need to elect officers from this board? Or do we need to go ahead and think in terms of putting a board in place and then letting that board elect its own officers?
That's what I would do, I think. If we restructure the board, let it elect officers.
I don't mind continuing to serve as chairman, but I can assure you, if there's someone else chomping at the bit to have this position, you're welcome to it. I've did it for 8 years.
I'll do it. I would do it if you want me to, but I don't think that's personally, I agree with what you just said, that it makes more sense to elect another board. I mean, if we're going to put another board in place that is not the commissioners, then it doesn't make really sense to elect new officers now. I don't think. I'd say just do it once that's decided at least. If we leave it like it is, then we can elect officers, I guess, then or something.
I guess the thing is, how long is it going to be before we put the board in place? Because if we're needing a meeting beforehand, do we need to go ahead and have ours in place? And then if every board ever gets put in, can they re-elect officers then, or does it have to stay in, officers have to stay in for a certain amount of time?
Well, I wouldn't say that officers have to stay in for a certain amount of time unless I'm business owner, but this is all new, it's very complex. And Christy, what have you found as far as election officers at this time?
Well, it just, like, if you look on page 3, section 2, election terms, it just lists the different types of roles that can be elected. It does say to serve for 1 year, or until their respective successors are elected and qualified. As far as y'all actually serving for 1 year with this change, I don't think that should be different.
And there's a little bit of room there for clarification from our legal counsel with that as well. If they're elected for a year, do we want people elected and then resigned and then somebody else elected? That seems a little confusing. If we did want to transition to another chairman, I would lean toward Andy because that would continue our precedent of whoever chairs the Board of Commissioners chairing the Board of Trustees. That's how I got this position to start with. And if that's a precedent, which it could be a mild one, then I would almost lean toward you doing it if you chose to. Or if it's the pleasure of the board, I'll continue doing it.
The reason I volunteered to do it is that I've got all the background from all this timeline and all the files still at home. And I could be pretty proactive in trying to figure out a new direction, recommend to you guys. But, you know, I could do that same thing without being the chair too, as far as that goes. But I would like to offer to work with Pam and Ty to redo the bylaws because, like I said, we've been through this for years now, working on this stuff, and I think I've got a lot of valuable information that would come in handy. in putting together something. And and also I think tonight we need to give some guidance to Pam or whoever on what specifically we're looking for to change in the bylaws, at least to some level. Or either get your opinion on it, on what it should be, back to us or something. Instead of just saying, go redo the bylaws. I mean, that really don't give you much to work with.
I agree to a point, and I'd be very interested in others' thoughts as well. Matter of fact, let me kind of just go down the line and see who has further thoughts at this time.
We're first, and we go first.
You can start on that end.
Well, yes, as you said, this rate was kind of made up back when Pioneer was in place. Am I correct on that? These bylaws,
No.
or back when you guys were running it?
It goes back to when we were running it, and that's why they're so complicated and so comprehensive.
Right.
This is a set of bylaws to actually run a hospital. We ran the hospital looking at the timeline for March 2010 to August 2011, almost a year and a half.
Like you said, we're in a whole different ballgame pretty much now
That's when
because
these
they're the ones running
came
it.
into being.
Right. That's what I just, like y'all said, instead of saying, hey, redo these bylaws, I'm all for if Commissioner Morris wants to get with Ty and Miss Pam right there and kind of go through these things. He does have probably more background than any of us on this. Me being new to the board, I couldn't tell you nothing about it. Just what I've read in the newspapers in the past, and that's about it, and that ain't much information, but that's kind of how I stand on it.
My turn?
If you want the floor, you have it.
We're in a situation right now that is very similar to what we've just gone through with DSS and the Board of Health. And here we have a situation where we're asking the Board of Trustees to be the Board of County Commissioners. And I certainly am not an expert in the business of running hospitals. Now, if it was running a school, I'd ask for the chairman. But 37 years in the school system, I have a good idea of how things operate, but I certainly am not the most qualified on this board to be the chairman, I don't think, of this current Board of Trustees. And what I do think needs to happen, though, is if we're going to be proactive in the way we did with DSS and the Board of Health, as we go through that process, we are going to have to keep a chairman on this board until we transition over, if we go that way, to the other board. You see what I'm saying? We've got to have a chairman, whether it's Commissioner Morris, you, Commissioner Nicholson, whoever. We've got to keep a chairman currently on this Board of Trustees until we make a decision in concurrence with our attorney and Life Bright on which direction we're going in the future. So we need to keep a chairman on this board until we make that decision on if we want to go and create a new board. And at that time, we can transition over to a new chairman.
Okay.
That's my opinion.
Thank you, Commissioner Yance.
Yeah, I would concur. I think that moving forward, I've been reading through some of this, and page 6 under committees, section 1, article 8 says committees may be created and abolished by amendment to these bylaws. Committees may also be created and abolished by resolution. And basically, what I see in this is, I think that we need to elect officers or chair, vice chair, however we want to do it, in order to proceed with changing these bylaws. And And then at that point, it also says that we can obviously change the bylaws. So then we would change it to state that if we decide that it's only going to be two members of two commissioners that are on it, or whatever it be, we can dictate that at that point in time. I think that moving forward, though, we need to put something in place now structurally so that we can proceed.
Others? Regarding anything that you've heard from any of the commission,
Just a couple more thoughts, Mr. Chair. I'll be the chair or not be the chair. Main thing I want to do is work on the bylaws and try to, head this thing in the right direction as we go forward. And I'm willing to commit a significant amount of time to doing that. And I'd be the chairman to do that or whatever. I'm also interested in looking at things like whether we should look at a hospital authority, and I don't even know what that is. I just know that some places have them. Pam maybe can answer or explain what that is, or whether that's something that would apply here. But basically kind of take an out-of-the-box look at this whole thing so that we come up with the right solutions, and definitely take a strategic long-term look at what we need to do for our folks out there medically.
okay, just how it is for me, my name has been listed as chairman for approximately 8 years. And I think I've kind of paid my dues in that regard, and I think it's probably time for someone else to be identified as the chairman. However, if it's for some valid and specific reasons that we don't need to make a change, I would be willing to continue. I'm not sure that's even my preference, but if it would help the process, I would do it. So there's kind of where I am, and it's entirely up to the board. Now as we discuss things, I continue to have more and more questions. For example, how can we function as a board of trustees and hospital authority when we have really legally, to the best of my knowledge, no basis for input other than suggestions or recommendations like any other citizen regarding the operation of the hospital by LifeBright? They were given total authority to run the hospital as they choose, as I understand it, Pam. Do you see it that way, or do you have other thoughts?
Only to add that I know from the LifeBright corporate perspective, there is a hospital authority structure in Georgia, and they've experienced some confusion. That body is in existence to give feedback about the hospital. They've done some fundraising. They've done several things in that area that I think has been confusing to LifeBright. Why is this body not acting like that body? So I think that would be some good discussion that would be beneficial to LifeBright as well.
Right.
And then I'll just add that from my peers, the folks, the critical access hospitals who are trying to restructure and see what the right fit, I think as Rick said a while ago, for the community, what the building needs to look like to take the hospital into the future. Those folks who have had the best success have had great community involvement. So looking to have either a subcommittee that the bylaws would allow for, the restructuring would allow for, to ask the community their feedback. What's the community willing to do to help you all as a body and LifeBright moving forward, to have a physical structure that makes sense to be in.
Kind of a sad irony to the physical structure is the facility in Virginia that Board Member Morris mentioned earlier that had a brand new hospital. And state of the art, I guess, for a rural hospital, and they didn't make it. It was unfortunate because the expense that was incurred in building a new hospital, they couldn't support it due to the heavy debt they had. Or that's what I heard. Anyway, our time is getting short, so we need to do something. Who has a motion, recommendation, that will move us forward from where we are.
I don't have a motion yet, but I do have a question about, as we redo the bylaws, we need some level of guidance, and maybe, I don't know if we have time to do it now, but we need to know, like, do you really want to look at a new board structure, or what questions, Pam, would you have is if we tried to sit down and redo the bylaws right now?
Well, I think we do need.
What do you need from us, I guess?
To vote on the board as it is now, to have us leave with a new chair, vice
Okay.
chair at least. Unless you got somebody else you want to run the hospital. But, I think then having the permission for us to work on new bylaws and structure. But as you said, it will take some time and energy to help pull that together.
It is something we need to do fairly quickly, though, right? Within weeks, or not many months. Like within weeks, would you say, to get the bylaws restructured? We could just go take a shot in the dark at the bylaws too, and we'd probably come up with a pretty decent product. But knowing if there's any particular hot button issues you guys want to address in those, we need. You could even email them to us or something. But.
Let me ask this question. You've heard Commissioner Morris's willingness our board member Morris's willingness to serve as liaison with the legal counsel, to serve as chairman of the board of trustees. What's the interest of our other board members? Do we have anyone else who's interested at this time, or how are you seeing where things are? Start with my board member to my left here.
I'll speak to it. I think that the reason that we're looking at redoing the bylaws and we're talking about a different committee is to find people that have a level of expertise in certain areas. I'll be the first one to tell you, if we were talking about construction or manufacturing, I'd raise my hand. We're talking about a hospital. That's the reason I'm keeping my hands in my lap, for a reason. So that being said, I've heard others say the same thing, that they don't consider themselves experts in this field. If Mr. Morris wants it, Mr. Nicholson, if you would prefer it, I certainly think that you should be involved. If you want it as
My
the
PhD. On PhD, I got is post hole digger, so don't look at me on that one.
So I'm totally on board with that. I just think the main thing, and when we talk about the bylaws and what we're looking for, I think the bylaws just need to be restructured, in my opinion, to state that this board is going to work side by side with the hospital, not as the head of the hospital or as the directive of the hospital. It would be more of a partnership, a community partnership, instead of a lead type position. And I think that we need to clarify this as quickly as possible to Mr. Morris's, because it speaks in here about sole member, and us as being the sole member. That's obviously not the case anymore.
Nowhere near. Commissioner Mendenhall, I believe I heard him say that he's not particularly interested in chairing.
Right. I don't think I have to go back over Mike. You heard how I felt, and I will stick with my previous comments.
My statement was that I've done it for 8 years. That's probably plenty long enough when it's supposed to be a year at a time. And if it served a specific useful purpose, would I consider continuing it. If Commissioner Morris wants to chair it, I do have an ongoing concern, and I'll just toss it out there. And it's not regarding you, Board Member Morris. And that is, I think we need to tread very, very carefully. LifeBright is in the command seat, so to speak. They are the authority vested with operating this hospital. And all the talk by our board and the board of trustees regarding the hospital may be mute to a great extent, because they're in the driver's seat. It's their hospital to operate. Now, where the board may come into play is looking for the future. Where do things go down the road? So, if Commissioner Morris is willing and someone would like to nominate him, then maybe we can go from there.
We're open for nominations.
Well, that's the next agenda item. If we have finished dealing with the bylaws, the next item is election of officers. And I think at the very least, we need a chairman and vice chairman.
I nominate Commissioner Morris for chairman of the board.
Okay. Are there other nominations? We'll poll the board.
Yes. Me.
Yes, me. One for me, not me, him. I'll go, Board Member Morris.
Yeah, I concur. Mr. Morris.
Morris.
Commissioner Morris.
Okay, your meeting.
Okay, we have nomination for vice chair.
I nominate Commissioner Walker.
Sounds good to me.
Have to poll the board.
I know.
Unless there's other nominations.
Okay, are there other nominations? Okay, nominations closed then. And you good?
Walker.
Me.
All right, good, great.
That was the reflection of you, Board Member Morris, or Chairman Morris. Yeah, I'll be glad to assist Rick anyway as needed. I live very near Ty's office. If you need a third person, that would be easy to arrange. May I offer a suggestion, and I'm just reiterating.
Absolutely.
This is a very delicate area considering the current arrangement. And I think we need to proceed very cautiously and very judiciously every step of the way. And Pam, I don't know if I may ask, Mr. Chairman, ask Pam, I don't know how much dialogue we need with LifeBright regarding this latest action, sort of having an active board of trustees again. What are your thoughts regarding how we should interact or be involved with LifeBright at this time?
I think they'll embrace that. I certainly came here to fulfill this third leg of the lease, to keep everything in compliance as I saw. And as I told you a minute ago, they are used to the board at the other hospital as part of the Georgia Hospital Authority configuration. So they know I'm here and why we've had this meeting today. And I think we look forward to a structure that would be a partnership with them.
Very good, thank you.
Anybody else have comments? One thing I would just tell you is that, Pam and I worked through this drill with this timeline, and the one thing the overriding thing we found out, and I think she would agree with it, is that counties don't need to be in the hospital business. That is the formula for absolute failure. So we'll definitely structure the bylaws in such a way that we continue to have it operated by experts and not county government, and then try to make other tweaks to the bylaws that fit and maybe give us some assurance that we have good health providers and health services down the road. And we'll do it fairly quickly. Do you have any comment?
I was just going to say thank you to Pam and Christy for bringing this information to us. Very appreciative. And I would not normally rush through this, but it's 5 after 6, and so I'm going to make a motion that we adjourn.
Second. You second.
You're chairman.
I'm second too, can I?
A second.
All in favor, say aye. Adjourn.
Thank y'all for coming.
We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Good to meet you.
It's nice to meet you too.
Take care of yourself.
Thank you.
50 cows.
That's,
Wow.
well, there's my extra one. I thought I had brought an extra one. Yeah. Nice to meet you. Thank y'all very much.
Good seeing you,
Nice to
Christine.
meet you, Mr.
Have a good one.
Morris.
Same here.